when it's oversimplified, it is really easy to make fun of. And because when you think about it, every relationship ends in tragedy. Either you break up or you die.
When I was younger, you would see in the bookstores the covers with the very Fabio-looking
Long
swooning maiden
hair.
in his arms.
Yes.
Like fully exposed chest. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably not for me.
That's, maybe not your demographic.
I'm not the target audience.
The relationship in our modern era, we tend to get close to someone, but then we get away from this person in our different stages of our lives.
Yeah.
And I think this sort of nuanced relationship, it's in our modern era, that is the relationship of our time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, podcasts, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and today we're starting another deep dive this week into the romance genre. Unlike our last theme, Meta March, I think everyone has some experience and likely some opinions about the romance genre, which is exactly why I want to dig in, because romance itself is so big. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of subgenres. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of baggage that kind of comes with it that we don't find with a lot of other genres. Starting next week and lasting through the month of August, we'll be discussing different romance stories with a host of different guests to decode why we can't quit these steamy reads, and also what makes so many want to hide them away or roll their eyes when they hear about them. So without further ado, let's get into it. For today's episode, we're actually going to be focusing on some questions I've written up to kind of give us a base understanding of what kind of different views are out there. So we're going to have some interviews with a bunch of different people that I know who all have very different reading habits. And the reason for this is I kind of want to dig into what are the perceptions of this genre? What do we usually associate with it? And I'll compare it to my own answers as well to try and give some context to what we're hearing. So I would encourage you as you listen to this to kind of answer the questions for yourself as well. These things only have meaning when we give it to them. So I would love it if you would dig into this with me at home. So let's break into those questions by introducing our four fantastic guests.
Okay, I'm Wanson, I'm 20 years old, and I'm now the host of another art show on RTI called Cinematic Motif.
I'm Chris, and I'm 41 years old.
So I'm Hannah. I'm one of the program hosts here at RTI. I do the retro reels.
Hi, my name is Eric, and I am 41 years old.
So the first question I wanted to ask was whether or not these four very different media watchers or readers actually read or watch much romance, and if there was a reason behind that. The genre itself is often quoted as one of the highest selling genres of fiction, and different websites will tell you different percents, including up to 1/4. For a lot of people, when they hear this question of do you read a lot of romance, I think we often think of stories where romance is the A plot. That means where it is the main plot that we're paying attention to, but it does come into a lot of stories as kind of an undertone or B plot. So the not main plot, but the plot that's happening in the background, like basically every Disney movie. So this is what they had to say.
I don't like pure romance, not just pure romance story. I'm more prone to watch movies like historical romance movies or like something that mix with other elements or other genres.
So I would say that I used to read a lot more and watch a lot more, actually. And also, depending on how broad romance is for you, then I still do. I do like romantic settings, but that doesn't necessarily mean love story. The typical romances doesn't attract me as much.
I do not. I don't believe I've ever read a actual romance novel. I have watched some, I guess, rom-com movies. Now that I think about it, there are very few straight up, this is a love story, like a serious dramatic love story.
On purpose? I don't seek anything out specifically. I watch anything that interests me. I can remember a time when romance appealed to me, when when I was like a preteen.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I kind of grew out of my interest in that, and now I need it to come with something extra to feel satisfied.
So I wanted to lay some groundwork and ask first, what is the first romance story that comes to mind when someone even says that word? If you think of a romance book or a romance movie, what's the first thing that pops into your head? It may be one that you've read personally, and for a lot of people, I think it's very famous ones. For me, I think of Shakespeare, I think of romantic comedies. I also think of like a lot of the B plots in movies. And the answers that I got from my friends also seem to reflect this same kind of pattern.
Was it Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
Sunshine
Mind.
of the Spotless Mind.
Yes.
So that one's kind of sad. Actually, I was thinking about this, and my favorite, I don't know why, but like I keep going back to Lost in Translation.
I also think of these old, silly, like shoujo mangas that I would read when I was little.
Yes.
Yes. Like just dorky, cute stuff. That's kind of what romance is to me.
I think one of the classic ones would be Romeo and Juliet, but once you really start thinking about it, that's not what I would consider a romantic story.
Okay, the story that immediately comes to my mind would be Heartstopper. That is my favorite romance genre story, I would say. It talks about LGBTQ plus issues and the mental health issues. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Something more important than simply romance.
So now that we have kind of a base understanding of what our first thoughts might be, I wanted to just kind of dive straight into what reputation this genre has, as well as to what extent you think that reputation is deserved.
All right, so I think, like people look down on romance for sure. People also think about it as like cheap storytelling or like, I guess like just like what's pop culture. Does it as a whole deserve it? I think it does in a way. You know what I mean? Like It is kind of like these Korean dramas and it's always the same like formula and it gets old, but there are really good stories still out there. So like a lot of stuff that Netflix is pushing right now, like To All the Boys I've Loved or I'm trying to think of all the names right now. I'm really bad with titles, but like those are really good. And even like Crazy Rich Asians, it was still kind of the same formula, but also like it was a new take.
I feel like a lot of people would gender the genre. They would say, it's a girl thing, it's a woman thing. And everyone I know who is still interested in romance is female. So I kind of can't argue.
Yeah.
But I think probably for that reason, of course, because, when women like something, people will dump on it. That probably a lot of people don't take romance seriously as a genre.
I think when we think of romance, people always think these stories are talking about the foolishness of us human. Because when we face love, when we face romance, we are kind of like a fool. We give away all of our, all of our social status, maybe a lot of money just to love someone or to give out our love.
Yeah.
And I think that is the reputation of romance have. That is the foolishness. And I think, right, I kind of agree with this reputation.
I personally found a lot of these answers very interesting because some of them did match my own. I also remember going to bookstores or even just large grocery stores and seeing the romance novels with the handsome couple on front. And I also felt similarly that a lot of times romance novels either had poor writing or had the reputation of poor writing. Maybe because I didn't feel like I saw myself reflected. But another reason for that is because romance novels come along with a lot of conventions. That means that there's a lot of things we expect from them and a lot of things that we expect them to do. Sometimes this means, like in a Disney movie, true love's first kiss, but it could spiral out into other things. So the next question I wanted to ask was, what are some conventions of the genre that you yourself really like?
Strangely enough, I do consider myself a romantic person. Like when I do see, mainly in movies, when, when the lovers do eventually find each other and, they express their love for each other and blah, blah, blah. I do feel very touched.
Yeah.
Like I do get emotional when I see that. However, that is not the kind of content that I seek out.
Yeah.
I only like it when it's sad. That's just about. I guess that's how it feels real to me. It's like, well, if I'm gonna be watching romance, it better feel like the things I've been through.
Yeah.
Because isn't that kind of what it's all about? Initially you're doing it as like wish fulfillment, and then later you're doing it as a kind of self-torture almost when you come to understand just how terrible it is to be in relationships. But yeah, that's something. When it's sad, I like it.
I think what I like the most about this genre and what it always does is that it makes love relatable to us. I think the genre is always displaying the universality of love, because we can see different love stories, and I think it makes everyone relatable because we always get this always sense of love in our life somehow, and I think that is what I like the most about the genre.
Now, of course, with the conventions that we like with any genre, there's also things that we dislike. And this kind of gets into a lot of the baggage that I think people carry around with romance. So we've talked about, like, perhaps they have a reputation for poor writing. Perhaps it's something that we think is juvenile. But I really wanted to ask people, what are the conventions they don't like? And maybe give us some examples so that we could put more into words things that often frustrate us about this iconic genre.
I think a lot of stories tell a very good love story, and they usually tend to be like sad in the end. But if I'm going to be real here, they also set some really crazy expectations for people and kind of ruin like people's relationships.
Yeah.
Or at least getting into like when they're young and having like wrong like ideas of what a relationship truly is. Like there's a lot of people that they will invent like this idea like if this is like the perfect story or whatever, this will never happen, so I'm never going to try and like put effort into finding somebody, right? It's kind of like people will like get trapped in that fantasy, or like their reality won't meet their expectations, and then it takes a lot of working out to understand like you just got to communicate. That's it. Like you just got to work together and communicate.
Again, having not specifically watched or read any of it, I think it would just be in general the predictability.
Yeah, the formula of it, the predictability.
In many movies, like we're saying, like you can see it coming. Like, oh, those two characters will end up together. And then, lo and behold, they do. And there's never really any surprise to it. And most of the time, it's not built on anything other than one is a male character, one is a female character. There's very little emotional connection built up over the course of the movie. It's just like, well, they're meant to be together, so it happens. So I'm also happy when certain movies do not go down that path. I think the one good example that I always remember is Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Because there is a strong male lead character and a female lead who, in other movies, they would end up together at the end of the movie. But in this particular one, they do not. They're friends. They're platonic. And I appreciated that they did not try to shoehorn in that romantic relationship when it was not necessary to the plot of the movie. And I tend to dislike that. It's lazy writing. I think that's what it is.
I think what I don't like about this genre is that the characters in these stories are always looking for love. And I don't know why.
Yeah,
for
they're
example,
like looking for it actively, like trying to fall in love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even at the beginning of the story, when they meet someone, they're trying to, be together with this person. I don't understand why. Why can't you just be friends?
Yeah.
Why should you be lovers? And that is what I hate so much about the genre. And it's kind of like telling people and telling us that we should seek love right now. But maybe love is not something that we need at this point in our life.
Yeah. Maybe you should just clear jets, like seek friendship, and from friendship, love.
Yeah. You should not just looking for a lover always.
Again, I personally found a lot of these answers very interesting. I think it's good to have examples when we say things like poor writing or shallow, or maybe it's not something that we can put ourselves into. I think romance is very unique from a lot of other genres that we experience in that a lot of times we are expected to put ourselves in the shoes of the protagonist. So I think that sometimes that might lead to poor writing because we're trying to create a hollow shell that we can encompass. But other times maybe that leads to us feeling disconnected. And that's not the case for every romance. A lot of times in B-plots, you're just supposed to root for the people rather than to wish to be them. But of course, I don't want to end on a bad note just before we start our month. So I wanted to finish up by asking everybody if they have a favorite couple, or if they don't have a favorite couple in any book or movie they've seen, what is something that keeps them coming back to the genre or that they find themselves still drawn to about it?
So one of my favorite romances in recent memory was from the book/film Atonement, the one between Cecilia and Robbie. And if you look up Atonement, it's like described as a romantic war drama. It's not even pure romance, like I was saying. It's always something extra. But the love story is what's really memorable about it. And I loved it. There's like a bit of a comedy of errors, and it's also very hot. And in the end, of course, it's heartbreaking. So it just checks all the boxes.
I couldn't think of one. I can think of couples that are in stories that I've read, but would I say they're my favorite? Would I say that like, oh, I wish I had that for me? Actually, there might be. I can't remember it though. See, I remember at some point feeling like, yes, I wish I had that, but I actually cannot remember what book series or what couple it was.
Yeah, you just remember like the experience.
That deep an impression.
Okay, I have I have two couples that I really like. So I'm gonna say one by one. So first of all, that is my favorite one, Heartstoppers couple. They're Nick and Charlie. I like these two people because they help each other so much throughout the whole story and throughout the whole Netflix series. They help each other with their coming out problems in terms of being gay and being bisexual.
Yeah.
And then also they help each other when they face when they face mental health issues. They I think Charlie has the sort of eating disorder.
Yeah.
And when they face this sort of obstacles in their relationship, they don't, keep another person away. Instead, they help each other in a very healthy way, like seeking medical, treatments. So I think that is beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the other couple that I love so much is the couple in the novel Normal People.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Yes, that is the Irish novel. I think the couples, I forgot the name of the couple actually. Anyway, I love them so much because it portrays the modern relationship of in our modern era, the relationship in our modern era. We tend to get close to someone, but then we get away from this person in our different stages of our lives.
Yeah.
Perhaps when they're in high school, they are really good boyfriends and girlfriends, but when they move on to university, they move away from each other. But perhaps in the future, they will get back together again.
Yeah.
And I think this sort of nuanced relationship, it's in our modern era, that is the relationship of our time.
Basically, I like the stories where the couples kind of overcome something, either separately or together, to be together in the end. That's the thing I like, right? So like all the fake drama and the miscommunication, I hate that now. I'm way too old to watch two people not say I love you at the right time or something like that. It's more about when the two couples, maybe if they're separated and they work to get together separately, or they overcome something totally together and can finally be together in the end. That's okay.
Now, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today's episode, but I hope you enjoyed diving into a few more ideas of what romance means to many people. Maybe you saw yourself reflected in some of the opinions that we discussed here today, or maybe you have an opinion that's totally separate. But for the rest of the month, we'll be discussing romance in the context of 4 different romance stories from pretty different backgrounds. I hope that you'll join us, and I hope that you'll enjoy investigating more into what makes these stories so popular throughout the eras. And We'll see you next time.